There's a solid argument to be made that the glass is neither half full or half empty. In fact, there is no glass at all. Even though we have our day-to-day responsibilities, at the end of it all, we're just a floating rock in space. So if there's a point to all of this, then what the hell is it? Well, the truth of the matter is that we'll never truly know. So let's stop trying to figure it out and instead just put some googly eyes on a bag of laundry. This is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
All right, cool. Well, thank you guys for watching. I think we're good to wrap up there,
This was
Said
great.
everything we need to say.
All at once. Excited to do this episode. This is like, you very quickly stated after this movie came out that this is one of your favorite movies.
Yes. It's like up there for me now. If we're going to get right into it, one of my favorite qualities of movies, and we've talked about this, is when it makes you feel kind of a range of emotions. Mm-hmm. And this movie is just that on steroids. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, you've said that to me a lot. And I think that's been a way I've been able to describe my favorite movies because of that way you describe it, of like feeling a range of emotions.
Yeah, when
like
it can make you laugh, it can make you cry, it can make you anxious, and make you scared, whatever. Yeah. All of those things that a movie can take you on.
Yeah, that's what you want a solid picture to do,
Exactly.
Let's introduce the podcast and then we'll get right into it. Welcome to my... God, I'm fucking it up lately. This is crazy.
Hey, just ease into it. You know what I mean?
Welcome to Movies That Changed Us. I'm Altaf.
And I'm Chris.
And if you're watching this, if you're goddamn...
Well, and today we're going to be talking about how Everything Everywhere All at Once changed us.
We're keeping all of this in.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to Movies That Changed Us. I'm Altaf.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're going to explore how Everything Everywhere All at Once changed us. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or wherever you listen to our podcasts, know that you can also watch this on YouTube at Movies That Changed Us.
And we also have a Patreon. If anyone likes the show and wants to support it, you can go to patreon.com/movies that changed us, and you can get ad-free podcasts and early access. And we also do weekly commentary tracks where we record ourselves watching movies, and you can watch along with us.
You've probably heard through our previous episodes that we've been doing the Disney Renaissance series on Patreon. So there's commentaries up for Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, and more.
Yeah.
So go check that out. This movie came out in 2022. I was really fucking excited for it. You were too.
Yes.
We both had seen Swiss Army Man. Not in theaters, but like when it was on Netflix.
Yeah. I think you watched it on your own at first, I remember. And you pressed for me to watch it for a while.
It quickly became like an object of an affection for me. Like, I was so in love with that movie. I had never seen anything like it. Obviously, it's known as the Farting Corpse movie starring Daniel Radcliffe as Farting Corpse and Paul Dano.
And by the way, if anyone listening has never heard of Swiss Army Man, just let that alone just be a sell for you to go see it.
I wonder, because for a while that movie, like, even if people who didn't watch it knew the Farting Corpse movie as the thing, but like, I wonder how many people who saw Everything Everywhere never even knew about Swiss Army Man.
I'm sure a lot, yeah.
Or found out about it after the fact. But... it was a movie that like it felt like it was made for me, which is like a high concept that had so much heart and great performances, and made me realize Daniel Radcliffe can do way more than I ever thought.
Sure.
It's one of my favorite performances from him. That being said, the Daniels quickly were just like, I want to see anything that they do next, whatever they do next. And then I remember when their next project was announced, which was like a kung fu action movie about a lady that's trying to get her taxes done. That was all I knew.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this is insane. And then the trailer came out. Everyone was like, this movie looks crazy. And then you and me and another friend of ours went to go see it in IMAX.
Yeah, I forgot we saw it in IMAX. It's so true.
Opening night, packed theater, and experience I'll never forget.
Yeah, it was amazing. I fucking love this movie. It's one of those things where it's like, I unconditionally love it to the point where I'm like, okay, I'll wine and dine it, but I'll also love it at its worst. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into it. So at the beginning of each episode, we always ask each other how this movie changed us. So Chris, how did Everything Everywhere change you?
I think this movie changed me in a way by telling me I don't have to change, if that makes any sense. Like, it has this calming reassurance and sincerity to it that like, oh, you're on the right track. You're okay. You know what I mean?
I think this movie, the way it changed me is that it made me feel like whatever, it contextualized what I've been feeling, which is Waymond's speech to Evelyn early in the movie of what Jobu Tupaki has created. She's been making something, and we don't know what it is yet, but it's been sucking everything in. And you can feel it, can't you?
Yeah.
Clothes don't wear the same the next day. Your coffee tastes strange. It like contextualized this like feeling of dread and overwhelming anxiety we've all been feeling for the past like 5 years.
And just the exhaustion of existing, essentially.
And it's the best part of any movie is when someone tells a story that you're just like, yeah, that.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I've been feeling. Oh, thank God you addressed it. And so it made me feel like I was okay for feeling that way, but then it put a spin on it, which was like, so what happens when you're feeling that way? What's the action you can take? If nothing matters, then what matters, basically? We'll get into it, but it was both like a surprise and also a great teaching moment for me philosophically.
Yeah. I mean, it expresses those, because there's a lot of art that expresses that, obviously, you know, that's just timeless.
Yeah.
But it does it in such an original and fun way.
In a contemporary way.
Exactly.
Like, this movie couldn't have been made any other time besides now.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think it has so much fun too, because like it doesn't, you know, feel pretentious in any way where it wants to be like, oh, I'm gonna show how smart we are as filmmakers and make people think. It like wants to have fun with you, you know what I mean? It has like the dumbest humor at the same time, which is like, I know I've probably brought this show up several times in different commentaries and podcasts, but like that's what I love about BoJack Horseman too, when it comes to handling nihilism and kind of the darkness that is life, that it also has the dumbest sense of humor at the same time,
and
to balance it out.
And BoJack goes way darker than this movie does, but it's still able to do like cut back to like the dumbest fucking Todd joke you could think of.
Yeah. Anyone that hasn't seen BoJack Horseman but loves everything everywhere, I highly recommend BoJack Horseman.
It's a good cousin project.
They're completely different. I won't totally compare them, but they both have a lot of the like the anxieties and like kind of what the energy it takes to exist and to try, essentially.
No, that's a great call. That's a good recommendation. They feel like distant cousins in a way.
Yeah.
Those two things. I think this is the Daniels brand is surprising you that you could care about something you didn't know you could care about. In Swiss Army Man, their whole pitch was just like, the first fart will make you laugh and the last fart will make you cry. And their pitch for Everything Everywhere was, what if my mom was in the Matrix?
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember when the trailer came out, and I remember some initial reviews of the movie were just like, oh, it's basically the Matrix.
Yeah.
And in a way that was kind of reductive too. I remember hearing people be like, yeah, no, it's crazy, hot dog fingers and all, but it's basically the Matrix. It wouldn't exist without the Matrix. But I think what's fascinating about this movie is that it starts off very much as Waymond being the Morpheus.
Well, I was going to say, it's essentially the Matrix for the first half. Is that where you're going with that? I didn't mean to hijack it, but...
No, but you're right. It's Matrix for the first half of Waymond being like, you feel it, don't you? There's something wrong here. Which is Morpheus' speech of just like, don't you feel like you're out of control when he gives that speech to Neo? And then Jobu Tupaki comes in, shows Evelyn the everything bagel, and then the movie just switches into this existential crisis. And that's where the real legs of the movie live. Is that like Evelyn wants to be Neo. Evelyn wants to be like, I'm the one, I can fight you. She even says that to Jobu. Yeah. And Jobu Tupaki comes in, and it's like if someone came in the Matrix and told Neo and Morpheus, like, none of this shit even matters. Yeah. You guys are fine for bullshit. Let's get the fuck out of here. And I think that's where this movie transcends.
Well, yeah. The heart and soul of this movie is mother and daughter, you know, and intergenerational trauma. And I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it, which I think is what's so wonderful about this movie, is that like anyone can really get something out of it, because there's a broader existentialism that we've been talking about too. But at the core of it, you know, it is a very personal story between, you know, an immigrant mother and her daughter trying to heal and trying to, you know, accept one another as they are, while the world around them is fucking crazy and they're trying to deal with it, you know?
Yeah, and it's almost like, does that even matter when the world is exploding?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think the point I was trying to make initially that I didn't really tie the bow on, which is the Daniels always make you care about something you didn't think you could care about. When I started with the farting corpse thing, but with this movie, I feel like something that I didn't expect to care about is the perspective of the immigrant parent. Because as an immigrant child, I've seen a lot of stories written and directed by immigrant kids, like kids from immigrant parents like me,
Yeah.
who are just kind of working through the second generation guilt and trauma, right? And this happens in like foreign movies and American movies, where it's just like these people trying to work through what their parents like gave to them. And I never thought I'd get a movie that would be from the perspective of the mom.
Sure. Yeah.
But give me the same level of catharsis and understanding, but from a different point of view.
Yeah.
And I think like we've gotten enough stories about kids being like, parents don't understand me, but we never get a story from the mom and like from the parents' perspective,
Trying to understand her kid almost.
Yeah. And her failing for a majority of the movie until she fully lets go and just embraces her kid.
Yeah. Learning to just unconditionally love her kid, essentially, warts and all, the same way that every human's flawed, and just knowing that, like, okay, this is my kid,
Exactly. So I think that's where this movie really shines for me. And for our listeners and viewers, I want to make it clear that, like, I think you can watch a lot of think pieces and articles on the craft of this movie, of like like verse jumps to these different worlds that are crazy. How did they do it? And I think what we want to focus on is like what really like hits us emotionally. I just want to make that clear. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This movie, we can just kind of hash it out now. The movie's fucking nuts. We know that,
Yeah.
And I think like you said, everything has kind of been set already. Like, hey, hot dog fingers, like you touched on.
But I want to focus on like what moved us.
Exactly. Like the emotional core of the movie, and what makes it stand out beyond all that too, that it can pull off both,
Totally.
Because we've all seen, Cocaine Bear, like we all know movies that have crazy concepts and do stupid shit, for fun.
And I think that
those are great. I'm not going to totally dunk on those. I haven't seen Cocaine Bear, but you know what I'm saying.
I think the Cocaine Bear sucks, but like I think the
like, by the way, I'm just going to nip that in the bud.
There's one good scene in Cocaine Bear. It's I'm gonna feel like a shithead for referencing her only to this show, but what's the actress's name from BoJack? Margot Martindale.
Oh, character actress Margot Martindale.
Watch BoJack, guys. But character actress Margot Martindale is in Cocaine Bear. She has the best scene where people who've seen it know.
Okay.
But where she talks into a stethoscope and says, "Bear," and then the next 3 minutes are where that movie just shines.
Okay.
Anyways, Cocaine Bear sucks, but yeah, I think the legacy, speaking on what you were saying, like, we know this movie's crazy. I think what troubles me about the legacy of this movie a little bit is that, like, when people talk about it, I think the only thing people want to talk about is the hot dog fingers.
And the anal stuff.
Oh, the fucking butt plug fight?
Yeah, the butt plug fights.
Which is amazing. And all that stuff is fun. I don't want to be a party pooper on that. Like, if that's the stuff that you really like about the movie, that's
interesting
fair.
Choice of words, I just wanted to say.
Exactly. I thank you.
Yeah.
But if that's what you connect with the movie, that's fine. But I think I've seen some reviews here and there from and also from like podcasts from people that I really respect that only talk about this movie as this like crazy wacky movie. And I really don't think this movie would have like been as successful as it was if it weren't for the relationship between Waymond and Evelyn, or Evelyn and Joy, like this family.
And its sincerity, and the open heart that this movie has,
like a heart on its sleeve sincerity.
Yeah, well, and like it uses the absurdity of everything thematically. There's a point to it. It's not just doing it just to shock you and to just be like, oh, this will sell tickets, let's do crazy shit. There's a whole point, to this movie essentially that's saying how crazy and chaotic the universe is, essentially, and how there's so many paths we can take that none of it matters. There's like an actual point to it,
Yeah, and like, I mean, to that point, there's even a way you could watch this movie, which is like, and I hate to make this point because this is like my least favorite type of point this is my least favorite type of theory that people throw out for any movie, which is like, is this all in Evelyn's head in the IRS meeting?
Oh, I don't care about all that.
But but I just want to bring up something. Like, there is a way you can watch this movie, which is like, you know how they verse jump to the adjacent universe, which is where she just goes home and gets her taxes done?
Yeah, yeah.
If you really cut out all the kung fu action stuff and just look at those sequence of events, the entire movie's still there. Mm-hmm. Like the core of the movie is all in that universe too.
Yeah.
Where that final conversation with Jobu mirrors the final conversation when she's like trying to get Jobu out of the everything bagel. And so it's just interesting that the movie's able to do both.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the movie knows when to shut the fuck up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Like it knows when like all the chaotic music and cutting and all this stuff just knows to have like an intimate scene between characters.
Well, literally, Waymond will literally tell Evelyn, like, Evelyn, stop.
Yeah.
And then he has a speech that makes me cry every time.
Yeah. Which we'll get to, you know.
Which I want to bring up, like, writing notes for this movie was making me cry. Like, writing like talking points of what I want to break up was making me emotional, and I couldn't understand it. I was like, this movie has made me cry every time I've seen it, but especially on rewatches. But like just putting on the Google Doc like some of Waymond's speeches that he gives, it fucking like brings me to tears.
Well, 2 questions for you going on for that. These aren't pre-thought questions, by the way.
Improv.
Do you cry more and more each time, or do you find new things to cry about, or is it the same things you cry about?
Same things, but it hits me harder each time.
Yeah.
Like I watched it again like 2 hours before you got here. Like I did a third rewatch to freshen my memory, and still like towards the latter half it got me again.
Yeah.
I think I compare it a little bit to the way I feel when I watch It's a Wonderful Life, which is every time the uncle comes out with a bucket of money.
I mean, yeah, it just destroys you, right?
And I think
I think we can safely say we're going to do It's a Wonderful Life next month for December. That's kind of...
Sure.
I mean, for longtime listeners or fans or whatever you want to call it, we were going to do a podcast on it like a year ago, and I don't remember. Some personal shit went down.
We had a fight. Yeah.
Did we have a fight?
Yeah.
I swear to God, I don't remember. Okay,
I remember what happened.
Did we got into a fight on set? Or
yeah,
something
we
like
had
that?
a cut camera and then we never like put it out.
Okay,
and I remember what happened, and I'm looking forward to bringing it up because it was during the time where like Nice Dude Movie Night was starting to go a little bit downhill financially,
a little bit, yeah,
and we were struggling. Which is funny that we had that fight during It's a Wonderful Life, which is about a man that's having like a breakdown.
The irony of us fighting on set about that
because he feels like he can't fulfill his dreams, and we were. Anyways,
yeah, we'll get to that.
But yeah, so when the uncle brings out the bucket of money, I always have tears, right? Same thing. When Waymond tells Evelyn to stop fighting the people at the IRS office and gives his whole speech of just like, enough fighting. I know that you guys are just fighting because you guys are scared.
Yeah.
And so much is happening. We don't know what's going on. And somehow I just think it's my fault.
Yeah.
But what I do know is when everything's bad, it's important to be kind, especially when everything's bad. I'm paraphrasing the quote, but that's basically
the meaning of it.
Yeah. Essence of the speech. And I can't fucking talk about it without breaking down. I can't fucking talk about it. It's because like it's and then
no, but it's so I think just to jump on that though is like it's so pure. I think that's really what you're getting at. You know, it's such a simple way to summarize like what we're feeling and collectively, and it's kind of a good way to contextualize our lives in a way that like we share this world. We share existing. We're not the main character. We're all kind of trying to get through things together.
Yeah, I mean, especially like now. Again, that's why I stress like the past like 5 years.
Yeah,
because with everything that's been happening with the pandemic. We've gone through like in the past, like basically 8 years, wildly crazy elections, and then we're just coming off like the recent results of the recent election. And I think that's one of the reasons why this movie even hit harder this time for me. It's just like reminding yourself of just like, it's insane out there. And I think the main point I want to bring up, which we can talk about, that this movie is trying to say is that it takes so much work to be an optimist it doesn't just come to you like it comes to Ted Lasso. Like, you know what I mean? It is something that you have to work for.
Yeah, and I don't even know if like I would agree that it's optimism, but it's like peace. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if it's always seeing the good in things, but it's just seeing things as they really are.
Well,
if that makes sense. At least that's the way I interpreted it. But I'd like to hear what you think about that.
I think I'm going to move my laptop here just so I don't talk away from the mic.
Yeah, go for it.
But real quick, I just want to read off like Waymond's speech, which is what I was kind of not the speech that I paraphrased, but when we're talking about putting in the work to be an optimist, Waymond says in his like, this is like the Waymond that meets up with her when she's a movie star in that universe, when they're outside in the alleyway talking.
When he's like all cool with his glasses.
Yeah, and they're doing the Wong Kar-wai in the Mood for Love thing, where if you haven't seen In the Mood for Love, which you really should, it's an amazing movie. Have you seen Chungking Express?
No.
So you haven't seen any Wong Kar-wai?
No.
Great filmmaker. You'd love him.
Okay, cool.
But this sequence is so much inspired. That framing of the people like jittery is literally that. He's also stylized exactly as the hero from In the Mood for Love.
Gotcha.
In the Mood for Love, one of the most romantic movies, one of the most tragic movies too. But he says, when I choose to see the good side of things, I'm not being naive. It is strategic and necessary. It's how I've learned to survive through everything. That's kind of what I mean.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's fair.
Which is like, I think it's easy for a lot of us to look at people who are walking through life being like, you know what, man, at least like we have each other, who see things that way, to be like, oh, fuck you, man, I don't need that right now. It's shitty. And you get kind of pissed at them, and you do look at them as weak. I've gone through that. As much as I try to be an optimist, I've gone through that.
Yeah.
You know? And I like how Waymond puts it, which is like, no, it's not like coming out of me because I'm just a good person. It's how I literally survive.
Yeah.
And that's how I know how to fight, which is what he says afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Waymond's character in general has been summarized so well that way, where he like unconditionally loves Evelyn, warts and all, right? Like, you know, like I said about this movie as a joke, but he does love Evelyn at, you know, her worst too. No matter what, he's just going to be supportive of her, and he doesn't make her feel bad for being angry about things and being stressed out and whatever, you know.
What's the first thing he does?
The first thing he does try to help her, and then he says, I know better than to ask you for help.
No. The first thing he does is we're introduced to Evelyn looking at her taxes, really stressed out, and we see like Waymond's back, like he's walking towards Evelyn. He looks at her, grabs the paper as a joke.
Yeah.
And then she says, no time for jokes, and he just gives it back. He's like, anyways. Like, that's how he's introduced, as a guy that like, my wife is looking through a pile of taxes. And he's like, maybe if I just throw in a joke. And to be honest, if I was in Evelyn's position and you did something like that to me, I would be fucking pissed.
Yeah.
That's why this movie gets me, is because in moments of like a lot of stress, you'll be trying to make a joke, and I can be just the most combative person, because I can just be someone that's like, fucking stop with that, man. This is a serious matter. And I think the movie's argument is like, no,
it's not. Yeah.
Like, nothing matters. Like, why not be kind if nothing matters?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's why, like, I sympathize both with Waymond and Evelyn. Like, I understand Evelyn wholeheartedly. And I want to be like Waymond, you know?
Yeah, they're a perfect yin and yang of each other.
It's like Frodo and Sam. Yeah. We're like, we all kind of live life like Frodo. We feel burdened, where we feel scared, but we want to be like Sam, as someone who can help their friends get through the tough times.
Yeah, someone who doesn't give up on, you know, their person, essentially.
Yeah.
And we all get caught up in our bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And so
do you have a Waymond in your life?
I don't think so.
The most
no.
important people in your life are like holding from.
Yeah.
They're like, they're all
better
fucking say me.
They're all pressing their headphones.
Your girlfriend is like, I swear to fucking God.
No, not in a bad way though. I think, you know, at least I kind of try to be my own Waymond nowadays, and I struggle with it a lot, you know. And I think like
how so? What do you mean?
Like in the sense of like, I think kind of like what, you know, we were just saying, how we all kind of strive to be like that. I think even just last week I hit a pretty gnarly depression, and I almost, to be honest, for a little bit, for like the day, when Evelyn kind of mentally broke and started smashing the window and then told Deirdre to shut up on the phone.
Oh, in the laundromat.
In the laundromat and all this stuff. That's kind of where I was last week. You know what I mean? I hit a point where I was like, I'm fucking tired and I'm done, And it takes a little bit to kind of pull you out of it. But I did want to just kind of just rope that in that. Like, I feel like this movie did just kind of snap me back into place a little bit, which is really cool.
See, man.
Yeah.
Honestly, like
it had, and that's what's so cool is this movie has like a genuinely positive impact on people.
like what? So I watched it for the podcast last week again, which was my third watch. And then like my third watch in total since the movie came out. And then it had been a week and it had been kind of a rough week for both you and me for different reasons.
Yeah.
And I watched it again this morning. And this morning it did the same thing for me, which is it snapped me out of it a little bit. And like I think the parts where I was getting really emotional was just like the acknowledgement of it's so miserable and overwhelming out there.
Yeah.
It's just so much to deal with, and we'll never get to all of it. Like, that's the magic of this movie, is showing that there's so many universes that we'll never reach and that we'll never fully understand. There's so many outcomes that could have happened. Like, since the election, think about how many fucking videos where we're just seeing, like, how did this happen? What now? Well, if you look at this corner of Minnesota, usually it's blue. Look at this town of Pennsylvania, now historically. And you just want to be like, shut the fuck up. Yeah. And when I watch this movie, it kind of, like, brings it back to what is important, which is, like, what can we control? We can control how we act around each other and how we show love. That's like the one thing that we can actually control.
Well, and they summarize all of those feelings of despair and anxieties of life, obviously just summarizing the movie's MacGuffin, which is a bagel, right? Which is
so beautiful. What a great, like, funny idea, but also so smart,
Yeah, and it's thematic, like it does, like it's consistent. Have you seen that there's, like, I noticed it this go around, watching it, how much circular imagery is used.
Oh, yeah, especially, like, from the moment where Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Deirdre, circles the, like, receipt with a black marker, which she later staples to her forehead.
Exactly, and obviously the bagel and even the opening shot, too, using that little mirror and how it zooms into the mirror to the family, almost like you're seeing the family through another prism or, like, another angle immediately. Yeah. And so I was curious because that actually is like a symbol in Zen Buddhism, funny enough. Just a circle, like a hand-drawn circle. And it's supposed to, I'm a little ignorant on this, but I think it's supposed to kind of represent almost like a life cycle kind of feeling, like kind of a sense of oneness a little bit.
Interesting. Now you're getting into, like, Buddhism a little bit. I like, you picked up a book, you've been, like, trying your best to kind of understand it more clearly.
Yeah, and for listen, I'm very much a rookie, so I'm not going to totally speak for it, but it does seem to be the only religion that makes sense.
Why does it speak to you?
I think because it's very much focusing inward, which is the only thing that we really can do. Kind of like, which is what this movie this movie's super fucking Eastern philosophy, Buddhist and Taoist, that, like, it's very much about, like, trusting the flow of the universe and not trying to fight to control things all the time and to get what you want and to pursue material things. It's more about focusing inwards and finding that kind of tranquility.
Totally.
And so me, myself, like I said, I'm still new to it. I've practiced meditating a couple times and I'm still I'm trying to be more consistent about it. But there is, like, a beauty in clearing your mind, and that's very easy to kind of grasp. It doesn't require, like, this kind of, it doesn't really challenge your preconceived notions of morality, and it still inspires you to kind of participate in the world.
There, from what I've read about it, there's also this openness to be curious about it. Like, there's this where a lot of religion has its set rules, and it feels like there's not this. I'm not talking about all religion and all its different facts, but like factions, I mean. But a lot of religion is kind of just like, this is how it's set, based on hundreds of years of tradition. And what I like about Buddhism, from the little I've read, is kind of like it is open to questions. It's open to you always wanting to learn more and ask about it, which is what I appreciate.
Yeah, 100%. And, like, I think regarding this movie, that is, like, a big central theme, is focusing on, like, not succumbing, you know, like knowing that everything is suffering and that there's nothingness and all that, you know, whatever you want to call it, this, you know, telling you to be stoic about the way you see the world, but it doesn't see it in a bad way. It still wants you to take part in things and to still do good and to still be kind, like we talked about.
Well,
you know, and that's the main battle is like, you know, submitting to that pain of nothingness.
I've been someone that's always against nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always like fought against that of the whole, like whenever someone said nothing matters or whatever, I'm like, no, come on, it's not okay to say that. We got to look at things in a positive light. But the difference with me was I always lied to myself about that. I wasn't like Waymond where I truly tried to see the good in things. I always just said that to kind of feel better about a shitty situation, but it didn't work. I still felt shitty. And I would wonder, I'm like, why am I even trying to be positive if I still feel this way? And I think this movie made me like realize that no, it is true. Nothing matters. Like that's true. It's okay to acknowledge that, but that's
a beautiful and exciting thing in a lot of ways. I know what you're getting at.
Exactly, and I never looked at it that way before this movie.
Yeah. I mean, and it summarizes it in such a cool way. You know, at the very end, obviously.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
I don't want to, like, that's like a...
But that is, like, that's the way to wrap it in the bow, right?
Totally. Actually, let's talk about it now, because I think we're in the right momentum for it. Are you talking about, like, Are you talking about the final conversation between Evelyn and Joy?
Yeah, I was just touching on that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, when they hold their final embrace, obviously, like you said, you know, like you can interpret this movie in a number of ways, but that's like the heart and soul, that scene of a mother and daughter reconciling their differences, and how the daughter ends up kind of playfully saying, you know, do you still want to have your party? And then she said, we can do whatever we want, you know? And it's like,
well, she says we can do whatever you want. Nothing matters.
Nothing matters. And for once you kind of understand and truly see that, like, oh no, this is a good thing that nothing matters, you know?
This movie's a lot about Evelyn, like, seeing her family for who they are, you know? Like, Evelyn accepting Joy for who she is, which is someone that does believe that nothing matters, right? But then Evelyn understanding that, like, yeah, okay, nothing matters, then we can live our lives. Let's love each other. Let's do that. And then she sees Waymond for who he is. For the whole movie, she always talks about Waymond as like, oh, I think my husband is messing up the audit.
Yeah, probably making things worse.
Right? And then there's that moment where she truly sees Waymond, where she touches him. And then it does that montage that fucking destroys me, which is all the shots of Waymond being like taking her to the laundromat, dinging the bell, creating a song out of it. Or that one moment where he puts a googly eye on one of the lanterns, looks at her and just be like, oh, like hides it, sees him, and all the way to Gong Gong.
Yeah.
Or should I say one of my favorite line readings of all time, which is, I'm Alpha Gong Gong.
When he's like rolling through on the wheelchair.
When she looks at Alpha Gong Gong and says the line, I am no longer willing to do to my daughter what you did to me.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of seeing her dad for who he is, which is like, no, you fucked me up in a way. And I've now been carrying over that to my daughter, and that's not okay. And she makes that choice. And it's just, this whole movie is about seeing each other, seeing like the people close to you.
Yeah, and that cycle that families have. Because every family to some extent has cycles, right?
It's a great transition. I think that's a big part of what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
which is like this second generational guilt that like we feel sometimes as kids or grandkids.
Yeah, where we always
immigrant parents or grandparents.
Exactly. And I think like I remember when I first saw the movie, the first thing I noticed in the opening, and I think I told you this on the phone briefly, but like, okay, so for listeners, I don't really talk about my racial, cultural background a lot.
I talk about it almost every episode.
But I'm like very mixed is the reason why. I don't really know what mine fully is, which part of myself I'm connected to, because I'm a lot of different races. And one of them, though, is I am part Chinese, you know, and that is probably the biggest part if I had to pick one.
Sure.
And I am the son of a second generationer, essentially. So I'm like a little more diluted to the American experience. So I'm not going to say I fully relate to everything, but I know a Chinese house when I see one. And that house in the opening is one of the most Chinese houses I've ever seen.
Talk about some elements that really hit you.
Just a little thing. I think like, you know, just It's really basic to say, but just kind of the way everything's organized and structured, and the lighting, and like the way you see little Chinese symbols on things throughout, and the food they have in the cabinets. Like I have a great grandma. She was my version of Gong Gong.
Yeah.
Bok Bok is what she was called.
Really?
Yeah. I never told you about her.
No.
Yeah.
I think you told me about your grandma, but I didn't know that's what you called her.
Yeah, she was my great grandma. I called her Bok Bok, and she lived to be, I believe, like 95.
Oh,
I
wow.
think. Yeah, she lived for a while.
Yeah.
And she was a wonderful lady. She wasn't all grumpy like Gong Gong was, She was like super happy to see the kids and stuff.
Right.
But with that being said, though, so I have like some connections to it. So with all that being said, it's just kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah. One of the funniest lines is when like the elevator scene between Waymond and Evelyn, when Alpha Waymond introduces himself, and he's kind of trying to sync up everything, and she sees her whole life through that elevator door, and there's that one shot of the kid being delivered to James Hong and being like, "I'm sorry, it's a girl."
Yeah, dude, I know. Millions of Chinese men and women laugh their asses off at that scene, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, to be frank, like, not my parents, but also like Indian families, I'm sure can relate to that. I'm Indian, like I am a second generation, or I had immigrant parents, so there's aspect to this I relate to, not directly, but just the general vibe of having immigrant parents. I feel like we all have some sort of connection to this movie. But I bet like people, like a Chinese family specifically, sees this movie in such a unique way.
Yeah, which, I mean, I'm not going to say you don't see a lot of that in movies in general, but to see it in such like a 3-dimensional light. Because there's only, of course, we've seen a ton of Asian characters, but throughout movies, but to see, like you even mentioned at the top of this podcast, to see like, like an immigrant mom as like the protagonist, and seeing that family dynamic.
Not even just as a protagonist, but like as like a Neo type, like as like a
badass.
She's the chosen one that's going to save us from the universe.
Yeah, the most important person in the multiverse, essentially.
Yeah, so is this just like Asian mom wearing like this red puffy vest with like the most mom sneakers ever?
Yeah.
Like there's this close-up shot when she like finally expresses to Deidre, "I love you," and is able to like sync up and be like a fighter. There's this close-up shot of her like shitty like Reebok style Walmart shoe making a spin, and it looks badass, but I'm like, oh my god, it's just like a shoe my mom would wear.
I know, it's so cool, man.
It's the same feeling I get when I see... I don't want to get carried away before... What were you going to say, though?
Oh, no, that was... You're good.
Well, okay, I want to get to... Let's stick with the immigrant parent storyline for a little bit before I get to this, because I want to make a little bit of a point about how the heroes in this movie are not usually heroes in other movies.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I think like, I thought a lot about just being the second generation guilt when I watched this movie, is that, when you are a second generation kid, you grow up hearing from your parents that they sacrificed a lot to come here, which they did. It's the Aziz Ansari stand-up bit that he did, which is like, your parents came to another country, they didn't speak the language, and they're like, fuck it, we're going. Like, we're leaving everything, we're going. Who cares? We'll get on a boat, we're coming here.
Yeah.
And they made something of themselves. Like, I personally, Altaf, couldn't imagine going to another country that I didn't speak the language, didn't know anything about the culture, and being like, yeah, I'm going to spend the next 20 years of my life here.
And raise a child there.
Yeah. And so you, now, because of that, you grow up feeling, whether it's from the parents directly or just you in general, you feel this sense of guilt that kind of harbors, which is like, oh my God, like I'm not going to ever please my parents. I'm not ever going to do something as great as they did, which is sacrifice everything and come here. I'm never going to be enough.
Like, do you feel like you consistently do things wrong kind of thing?
All the time. I always feel like, well, I'm fucking things up consistently. Nothing's ever going to be said. And to be frank, it's not always because of like my parents are telling me that. Sometimes it's just all internal, like in my own head. Like I'm always going to disappoint them. I'm never going to like overcome that. And I want to reiterate, we've seen that story in other movies from the perspective of the kid, but we've never seen like story from the perspective of the mom. Which is like the mom's being like, What the fuck? Like, you should be happy that your mom's so modern and accepting you liking girls.
Yeah.
Like, Evelyn's in the perspective of, like, you should be happy I'm dealing with all your bullshit.
Like, yeah, exactly. You have it pretty good compared to how other kids, you
only call me once a week whenever you need something. Like, she's kind of brushing it off.
Yeah.
And then she has to kind of learn that, like, because even when she sees like Jobu Tupaki show her the nothingness of the world, she just thinks that, like, oh, that's Jobu Tupaki in Joy's head. That's not Joy.
Yeah.
She doesn't even like, oh no, Joy, the evil forces are messing with you. Because of you, my daughter has tattoos.
Yeah, well, that's what's so, like, the first half of the movie does a lot of table setting to make you think that with Evelyn, too.
You think you're watching The Matrix.
Exactly. They set it up, Jobu Tawaki's this big villain, like it's a Marvel movie or something like that. Then you learn that it's, oh no, her daughter's depressed. That's kind of really what it is.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, is that, like, I think it is... It's very common for, like, immigrant parents who come from another country who are not familiar with the culture to be protective of their culture and to also be super protective of their kid, because they're coming from another country. They're raising them in a country they're not familiar with. So they're like, okay, my kid can't be influenced by outside forces. Mm-hmm. And when your kid goes another direction, immediately is like, oh, it's because he or she's hanging out with a lot of white people, or he or she's hanging out, or he or she just got a tattoo, and that's why they're like that now.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure it's easy to look at it from a perspective of, like, you know, what do you have to complain about? You're in America, you're living a pretty fucking solid life compared to where we could have been before, or something like that, you know, or the conditions we were in that made us move here in the first place.
And Jobu Tapaki is basically her daughter showing her mom, like, the everything bagel, which is a physical representation of her depression.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's this, like, fantasy movie of, like, what if you could, like, literally show your parents exactly what you're feeling?
Yeah, and it what's so cool, and it's so weird to say. I know, you know, I don't want to harp on it too much, but, you know, using a bagel as it is thematically powerful, because the idea of, like, you know, it's everything, right? She even said, you know, it has all the, you know, sesame and all this shit.
All my report cards, every pictures of dogs, every Craigslist posting.
Thank you.
Salt.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
But the thing about bagels, though, in the hole, nothing.
Yeah.
In the middle, at the center, outside of all the bullshit, inside, it's hollow and empty. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so
when Evelyn sees that, she feels fucking depressed. Mm-hmm. She's at the laundromat being like, fuck all this.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, and it shows, yeah, exactly. It's like...
She has to feel exactly what her daughter feels to fully sympathize and come back.
To understand it, yeah.
For them to hug, they have to come to this, like, understanding that is, you know, it's very hard to achieve.
Which part's hard to achieve? Are you talking about, like, as a movie, making something like that and achieving that in the story?
Well, in life. Like, forget the immigrant parent thing, but the relationship between a parent and children, like, they both, we want our parents to understand us desperately, and our parents want to understand us desperately. And because of, like, life and how overbearing life is, it's just impossible. It feels impossible.
Yeah.
I think the argument this movie is making is that if you take on this feeling of, like, nothing matters and you embrace that and look at it from the perspective of just, like, if nothing matters, then it's important to be kind, then maybe you all can come to this mutual understanding and just fucking hug.
Yeah, well, it's like it's, you know, I wrote this down, you know, from the famous song "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life" from Monty Python's Life of Brian.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big lines that always kicked with me that I just love because it's so simple but so wise. Let me pull it up real quick. It's when it's between the lines, when the background's going, "Always look on," whatever. He says, I mean, what have you got to lose? You know, you come from nothing. You're going back to nothing. What have you lost? Nothing. That's what he says. Like, it's like life is always going to be a net zero. You know what I mean? Whatever you put into it, whatever you get from it, you're always going to die and end up as nothing, you know? And so,
yeah.
Look at that as a good thing, though. You know what I mean? Like, every moment is worth celebrating. Every day that you're still here and experiencing new things, you're a new person, essentially, every moment, because you're getting new experiences, you're learning new things, you're taking things in. You're getting to be part of this, you know? And it's pretty fucking cool for the most part.
No, completely. It's such a, like, you're right. It's such a sincere message.
Yeah.
That this wacky, crazy metatextual movie has. This is such a modern movie that is also very classical with its sentimentality.
Yeah, and like it's made with such precision, like because like on paper, like obviously there's so much coverage, right? In terms of how much, I can't imagine how much they shot, how many costume changes they had to do, how many set changes they had to do to get all these tiny little
to be
beats.
clear, it's like unbelievable how this movie's still coherent.
I know. Well, that's what I'm getting at is like what's so fucking genius about it though is when it's bouncing between the universes, they transition. Like when they're in the closet in the beginning, when Waymond and Evelyn are in the closet trying to do all the exposition, how Deirdre pops up in the closet with a light going like Evelyn, and that's what snaps her out of it. The fact that they had to do that means that the editor is married to those two scenes transitioning to each other. You cannot cut those scenes out because they all flow together. And that's that way throughout the whole movie.
The editor's name is Paul Rogers, won the Oscar for this movie.
Yeah, incredible job, Paul Rogers. Like for everyone, right? And the script and all that stuff too. But like how, you know what I'm getting at? Like, but the flow between cutting all the different universes has like a thing. Like Evelyn will space out and then a light will shine and then it cuts to the other universe.
Well, I think like, I gotta say, like, this movie really benefits from like multiple watches too, because you're like picking up all the themes that it's like sprinkling throughout too, and like the tiny things characters are doing, like when she's doing her taxes. You see there's this small shot of like Waymond picking up something and you see a tray of cookies in his hand. Yeah. And he's like, oh, he's baking cookies for the IRS agent later. Like while Evelyn's mind is just like, Waymond's just like messing around. He's just too goofy. Like Waymond is doing just as much work, but in his own way. It's like setting that up.
Well, and the cookie comes back too in the Kung Fu universe too. Remember how like she has the cookie before she gets on the red carpet?
Oh, you mean when she becomes Michelle Yeoh in that universe? Where she literally just becomes
the
Michelle
Kung Fu universe, literally our universe.
Okay, so I think this is a great way to transition to another big topic I wanted to talk about, which is the heroes in this movie are not heroes you see are not usually heroes in other movies.
Sure.
Which is people in their 50s and 60s, middle-aged people that are Asian, and Jamie Lee Curtis is not Asian, but still, mostly primarily Asian, in charge of saving the universe.
Yeah.
And again, it's that shot of like, I already mentioned, it's Evelyn and Jamie Lee Curtis going at it. And I'm like, oh my God, these two older women who are still obviously really beautiful. We all know how I feel about Jamie Lee Curtis. She's right behind you.
She's over here. You can slightly see her. She's like kind of cut out a little bit, but you've seen her in other podcast episodes. We love her.
We love her so much. But I think seeing those two fight was like, oh my God.
Like this exists. Like this happened.
And but this is what I wanted to lead up to. This was like a big like moment in the theater for me that blew my mind. This movie came out in 2022 to give some context, and it was during a time where we didn't know if movies were ever going to come back. It was this feeling of like, okay, man, Jesus, like HBO did this day and date thing. Everyone got used to watching movies at home. The only movies that do sort of well are MCU movies. The last movie that did well in theaters was Spider-Man No Way Home, which came out December 2021. And we were like, are movies gone? Like, do people care enough,
Yeah.
2022 was the year that Top Gun Maverick came out, RRR came out, and this movie came out. And it was like this feeling of like, maybe this could still exist. And that being said, we go to see Everything Everywhere in IMAX. This movie has no characters you've seen before. This is not an IP project. This is an original project.
Yeah.
Kiwi Quan is in green polo and khakis. These security guards come through the elevator. He turns into Alpha Waymond, takes out the chapstick, bites the chapstick, unclips the fanny pack, kicks ass.
Yeah.
That entire fight sequence is so rad, very creative, and it's very Daniels. Like it's so many weird ideas in one. The pebbles, throwing them in the fanny pack and knocking them out.
Oh, especially the first time watching this movie too, when you don't even there's no explanation why he took a bite out of the chapstick. But at that point, you're watching it thinking like for the first time, why the fuck did he do that?
You realize, and then it's explained that like he has to do something really weird and offbeat to get his powers.
Yeah, he has to deviate from like what the universe expects of him, kind of thing. Yeah.
I remember that sequence happened. again, this was before people even. A lot of people, including myself, didn't know that was the Kiwi Quan. We didn't know that was like we didn't recognize that he was short round.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. You didn't know that.
No, not until afterwards. Like we just saw him as just like, oh, it's an actor.
And this was his first role on screen in 20 years. After he became a big child actor from Goonies and Indiana Jones, he couldn't get any other roles because for a while, for multiple decades, Asian representation in Hollywood was ass.
Yeah.
Not just multiple decades, for longer than that.
Yeah, yeah.
And his whole story was literally he saw Crazy Rich Asians and he saw Michelle Yeoh and a slew of Asian actors and felt like, wow.
Maybe I should get back to it.
And he felt jealous that like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I wish I was in that. And also I didn't know that was possible. And so he called his agent, first thing that he got, Everything Everywhere. So to put a ribbon on this story that I'm telling, IMAX screen, we don't know who this guy is, suddenly kicks ass out of nowhere. We're like, what the fuck? And then when he clips back in his fanny pack, the entire audience erupts.
I remember that. Yeah. I remember how fucking cool that feeling was.
It's the first time in the movie my eyes welled up. And it was not even an emotional moment. It was like this entertaining, like action movie moment. But it was like oh my God, we're all clapping for a guy we don't know that's wearing a green polo and khaki shirts and has these, like, again, Reebok style shoes. But we're like, fuck yeah,
and
man.
It wasn't Iron Man doing it.
And we were like, and it made me feel happy for him. And then it got me even more emotional when I went back home, like, who's that guy? And I learned who he was and I figured out his whole story that I just said. And I'm like, oh my God, good for fucking him.
I remember you and I were like live tweeting, texting each other essentially as the Oscars were going.
I fucking sobbed when he won.
I know the euphoria that you and I felt is like indescribable when he won.
Okay, well, first of all, his speech, he was giving whole, like, amazing speeches throughout the entire, like, awards run. But when he goes up and gets his speech and talks about, like, how, like, mom and dad, I did it.
Yeah.
And he holds, like, I fucking just lost it.
Yeah.
And then there's that beautiful moment where Everything Everywhere won Best Picture. Harrison Ford presented it. And they won Best Picture, and Kiwi Quan just goes up and like hugs Harrison Ford. I think at one point kisses him on the cheek. Like, and Harrison Ford looks so happy. And I remember Mike from Red Letter Media talked about that, and you said that it made my cold heart really warm. Like, even Mike was moved by it.
That's amazing. I forgot he said that. I remember that though.
But like, yeah, can talk about that moment, how you felt seeing him, and like how did Waymond make you feel, like, in the movie?
Oh yeah, I mean, same deal. I mean, like, I think I was clapping along with everyone and I was laughing my ass off and didn't, at that point, especially at that point, when he took a bite out of chapstick,
none of us knew.
We had no idea what was coming next, and I was just fucking leaning in ready at that point. Like, I was like, all right, let's see what this movie has to offer me. And it didn't disappoint the whole way through. The movie only escalated from there. And well, I think, and I said this already, but like, I think what's so special though is, like I said before, the movie knows when to shut the fuck up too. It doesn't just go like, let's get crazier, you know?
Well, the scene right before that is Evelyn finding out that Waymond wants to divorce him.
Exactly, yeah.
And Evelyn is like, we made a sacred promise, so what? Just because these people got divorced, now you want to too? And it cuts back to Waymond be like, Evelyn, I wish you and I could just... And it's clear that what he wants to say is like, I wish, like... like, basically what he wants to say, I wish you would just kiss me. I wish you would
just love me.
I wish you would see me.
Yeah.
You know? And there's that brilliant moment, like, as they're going up, as they enter the IRS building, he sees that older couple kind of, like, be affectionate.
Yeah.
As he's going past, it's so clear what he wants. And throughout the movie, there's these moments where Evelyn's trying to tell Deirdre she loves her just so she can get the powers, but Waymond's in between. So Waymond looks at Evelyn like he thinks Evelyn's saying that to him. Yeah. And he's like, what? And like Evelyn pushes Waymond to the side.
I know, Waymond really gets the short end of the stick for that first chunk of the movie.
A heartbreakingly funny moment too was, and I remember like in the theater what it felt like when Evelyn sees her life without Waymond.
Oh, yeah.
And she becomes Michelle Yeoh, basically.
Yeah.
And she was like, I wish you should bring back real Waymond. I wish you could see this, my life, what it was like without him. It was so great. Okay, so I want to kind of, we obviously have fans who wrote in of how this movie changed them. And I want to read those out. I want to end our conversation on the stairwell sequence, because I think that's like the fucking peak of the movie emotionally.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, let's shout out some performances.
Some shouties.
Michelle Yeoh, who we really haven't talked about her as much as an actress in this movie. We talked about Evelyn as a character.
Yeah, but she's incredible.
How do you know Michelle Yeoh before this movie?
I didn't.
Fucking way.
Okay, so to be clear, I did see Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon as a kid when it first came out, when I was like 5 or 6. So kind of, yeah, but I didn't connect the dots.
She is so beautiful in that movie.
In Crouching Tiger?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's great.
And also in this, I mean, but like
both, yeah.
She's always been beautiful, but Crouching Tiger is like, my God, that is just like a gorgeous woman.
And she like kicks ass in
So
that movie
much
too,
ass.
dude. That's fight scene anyway. I know.
Well, I mean, but we rewatched that movie in theaters when they did the theatrical release, and Chris wasn't having any of it. He just fell asleep.
Oh my God, dude. I forgot about that.
He didn't fall asleep. You should just say it really quickly.
I just honestly, man, like I'm getting older, and sometimes I get a little sleepy in movies now. I'm slowly getting that trait, and I hate it. I'm so ashamed.
But here's the thing that happened that I think is funny. You were already pretty sleepy when we went in to go see the movie, and because you hadn't eaten, you made the amazing smart decision that you were sleepy, so you got like in the theater had these like sliders.
I totally forgot about that.
And you ate like 4 sliders and was like dozing off. Like I was like, of course you were. No shit. What else is gonna happen?
Totally forgot that happened. I forgot how much I ate right before that too.
And
yeah, literally in the theater, my eyes were like, I was trying to keep them open. It was nothing against the movie.
I don't blame you either
me.
because it was I know you have problems with sleep too. So like I don't want to like. It's just really funny to me.
Yeah, no, it was funny. You're right.
And it's like one of the most beautiful movies that is so gripping that you're just like, oh God.
But
anyways,
yeah, shouty to Michelle Yeoh for sure.
I think,
absolutely, she's amazing in this movie.
Such a moving performance, and I think she's the reason. Without her, I feel like the character wouldn't work. The character might be insufferable without her. Michelle Yeoh really makes her work.
Yeah, because she's like funny too at the same time.
Really funny, and also because it's Michelle Yeoh, there's a lot of the fight choreography that she's doing on camera. You can see it.
Yeah, it feels like sometimes I get like a secondhand anxiety thinking about the directors who've never worked with someone like Michelle Yeoh, who's such a long time legendary actress, and pitching her a role like this.
Yeah.
You know, I thought the same thing of something like The Substance when that movie came out. Like, imagine the filmmakers pitching that to Demi Moore.
I know.
You know what I'm
Going
saying?
to Demi Moore, who has never done a genre piece like this.
That's what I'm saying, you know? So, like, I love when that shit happens, but sometimes I just put myself in the shoes of the filmmakers. Like, how the hell did they do that? But
Michelle Yeoh has done a lot of action. She was in, like, Police Story 3. She's done... So I feel like they were able to probably pitch it as, like, an action movie first.
Yeah.
And then she read the script. But... I mean, obviously, the famous story behind this, that this was originally supposed to be a Jackie Chan role.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it. And then they kind of rewrote the role thinking about Michelle Yeoh. And one of the Daniels had this, like, childhood crush of Michelle Yeoh. And he would say that my mom would be like, she's so much older than you. That's not going to... And he's like, I love her.
Like, I don't know what to tell you, Mom.
And apparently Michelle Yeoh, like, had, like... they saw Michelle Yeoh after she read the script, and she had like bookmarks on each page, so many notes she wrote for herself. Like she was so invested immediately.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I'm sure, as an Asian woman, seeing a role like this, I'm like, oh, this is like an important role that I have responsibility to do too, because like I need to be able to connect with people and have people empathize with this type of experience. Because that's not portrayed a lot in movies.
Yeah. And there's an interview that she has where she kind of like breaks down emotionally, and she's like, she starts crying, where she was just like, I just want like my future grandkids to be able to watch this and be proud and see that someone like that can be on screen. And she won a fucking Oscar. She won Best Actress. It's so great. What a great story.
I know. This whole movie is just a great story, isn't it?
Yeah, like the story itself and then everything around it. But then we have performances like James Hong.
Shouty to James Hong.
So fucking good in this. Again, the best line delivery in the entire movie is literally being like, I'm Alpha Gong Gong. It's so fucking
Well, when he first, because like it was when Joy was about to like suck Evelyn into the everything bagel, and then Alpha Gong Gong just zips in on his wheelchair like absurdly fast.
It's like the movie, like, and then when he says I'm Alpha Gong Gong, Evelyn is like, oh, not you two. And you in the audience feel that way. You're like, another layer? Yeah. Like, what the hell's going on?
But he's like ends up in this like robotic suit.
God, it's so cool that he did this. I mean, obviously, James Hong is now 95. If you read his Wikipedia page, he's been working in Hollywood since like the 50s.
Yeah.
He is an icon. Big Trouble in Little China, fucking him. He's amazing.
Yeah, no, right? He's amazing in that movie.
But you've mentioned something in the before when we've talked about this movie in the past of how like these roles kind of feel meta in the way of who these actors are.
Yeah.
You were talking about James Hong in that sense. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think I've read into this before, so just know this isn't totally an original thought by me, but it was interesting seeing it again and noticing it a lot more is how much of the roles or the characters are kind of parallel to their real life counterparts.
Yeah, like almost like even when they're showing like montages of Michelle Yeoh from the Crazy Rich Asians premiere and stuff like that.
Exactly. Maybe not they're totally real life, but like how we see them on screen in real life, if that makes any sense.
Sure, yeah.
You know, how we were used to seeing James Hong, and obviously in Big Trouble in Little China being this like diabolical, cunning, evil old man, you know?
And then he literally is that in this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, another great line reading by Stephanie Sue, who's amazing in this as Jobu Tapaki and Joy.
Yeah.
Like, she's so good in it. I think in conversation, she gets overshadowed a little bit by Kiwi Quan and Michelle Yeoh, but she's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
But that line delivery, she's like, where she's kind of like, Grandpa has a gun. Because suddenly Gaga is like holding a gun to Joy.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and the character of, I'll say Jobu Tapaki is like separate from Joy, right? They're kind of two different characters, even though they're like one, but they're two different performances. Mm-hmm. Is like she moves so like effortlessly through everything, and even obviously like every scene, famously, she's wearing absurd outfits, like get weirder and weirder.
They had a
with
lot
every
of fun.
Scene. Yeah, but she always wears them like she doesn't care. You know what I mean? She never is trying to show off or anything. You almost don't notice her outfits unless you really look at them.
The whole function of her being able to move through each universe, the way she just tilts her head.
Exactly.
And yeah, there's just this feeling of like she's seen everything and knows everything, and the knowledge is just has gotten to a point where it's just like, well, I know everything that happens in every other outcome. And what I've just found out is the version, the in the center of it all is nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like, and her performance reflects that as well. But I like to remind people she's introduced in an Elvis outfit with a pig, and she looks at a cop and turns the cop into confetti and then starts fighting other people with like a dildo. This movie is wonderful.
I know, or God bless this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, remember that like emotional like B plot in the hot dog finger world about like her getting mad at Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis moves out, but then is able to like, they're able to play music for each other.
Yeah, and with their feet.
And find love for each other again. That's like segmented in another movie. But
there's barely any dialogue in those scenes too. It's just kind of just recurring visuals. And then them both like spinning in circles, dancing together with their big old hot dog hands.
Yeah. So like they bite into the hot dog and ketchup and mustard comes out. So it's like, once you start thinking about it, it's like, that's going to hurt my brain. Okay. So I think I want to end this conversation before we get into the emails that we got with the stairwell fight scene.
Yes.
Obviously, we talked about Evelyn touching Waymond after Waymond gives that speech about how important it is to be kind. Mm-hmm. Evelyn sees Waymond for who he is, which is this person that's not been a hindrance in her life, which is what she's thought this entire movie, but actually someone that's helped her fight through it in a way that she didn't even think about because she was so in her own head.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on the line too that he says, where he says, like, even though you've broken my heart yet again, in another world, I would have really liked just doing laundry and taxes with you.
Yeah, I mean, it fucking kills you.
It's like, if that's not love, you know what I mean? Like,
it's like also one of the hottest lines ever. Like he's just taking a drag of a cigarette and he just looks back and just walks away.
Yeah, I know. You're like, okay, well, you have to marry him now, right?
Yeah, that's the guy you marry. But to be what works about that moment is that this is a universe that Evelyn was at in the first half of the movie was being like, you should have seen my life. It's amazing. It's that universe in which he says that to her. Mm-hmm. So even though she looks at when she became a movie star, that universe as this thing to look up to, in that universe, that Michelle Yeoh is actually depressed too because she lost her love. Like she doesn't have that, and she's in the alleyway, and it feels desperate and disgusting. So it shows you perspective. Now, after all that is happening, Evelyn sees this stairwell that's blocking the entrance to the bagel in which Jobu Tupaki is about to enter through and just like destroy everything. Yeah. Evelyn decides to go afterwards. She's getting ready to fight, clenches her fists and everything. Waymond's like, Evelyn, no, please. And I remember that Daniel's talking about how, specifically Daniel Quan, talking about how he feels like portraying violence should be more considered nowadays, especially with all the stuff that's going around in our world. He feels like he said that he loves John Wick, he loves all these action movies as well, but he felt like what I want to bring to movies is not just another classic stairwell fight, which is like what any other movie would be, which is like, okay, now we're gonna get this wide shot that took like, this took like weeks to film.
It was gonna do like an old boy shot kind of thing.
And he said that like, I wanted to make sure that the action was considered and there was this emotional core to it. And so literally, Waymond says stop, and there's gunshots. And just like the fucking Matrix, she stops them. And this is literally the Matrix, right? But the way it flips it, instead of just stopping it midway, she turns it into googly eyes.
Yeah. She puts it on her forehead.
She puts it on her forehead, which is an image we've seen in the trailer. And Waymond's like, Evelyn, what are you doing? And then it's the I can't fucking talk about it.
I'll say it for you if you want.
Yeah, you should say it. I literally will start crying if I say it.
She turns to him and says, I'm learning to fight like you.
And the music goes into just this beautiful, like,
crescendo of the was it piano at that point?
Sounded like it.
Yeah, because I think that's when it gets more meditative while she's like...
Yeah. And then she basically interacts with people we've seen throughout the movie. The bearded guy that you were like, this guy's really fucking creepy.
Yeah.
Where he's like, oh, your perfume reminds me of my wife. And you're like, okay, fucking get out of here. But then she sprays that perfume. She turns that like a weapon into perfume.
Yeah, it was like a grenade, right? That she turned into a bottle of perfume or something
and
like that.
And then he smells it and he's smiling.
Yeah.
And then you realize that's the game. She's going to be doing that throughout this entire staircase.
Yeah, she's going to make everyone's lives better and make them feel better about themselves and give them some level of self-worth, essentially.
I mean, my favorite is like also the one that's the most ridiculous and funny of the one of the Daniels is this guy, the guy that's into BDSM, the bald guy.
Yeah.
That's one of the Daniels.
Oh, I know. I didn't know when I first saw it, but I remember you told me after.
And she like whips him in the ass, and then he feels happiness. And so that's the shit that I love that the Daniels are able to do, which is, again, I sorry to repeat it, but it's the thing that's said about Swiss Army Man. The first fart will make you laugh, the last fart will make you cry.
Yeah.
Which is what this movie, like when you see the BDSM scene initially in the movie, in that alternate, you're like, oh, this is gross. When you see the bearded guy, you're like, this guy's a perv. And then they turn it into something beautiful through an act of kindness.
Well, and then it cuts back to whatever you want to call, quote unquote, like real life, her back at the laundromat. And the way they embody all of that action is just her telling Deirdre, you are worthy of love. You are lovable. You know what I mean? And so I think some people aren't told that a lot,
Deirdre is able to like tell Evelyn too, of just be like, yeah, Waymond was helping. Like he talks about
and then they end up sharing that vape pen together.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the coolest like scenes because you're just like, I wish I was there on that bench with them. Like,
yeah, but it's still,
I know.
You see them like let their walls down for a moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because the whole movie they're both just like, you get back here, do your taxes.
Do your taxes, all the paperwork, do your receipts or this and that. And then you see them just shooting the shit for a moment.
In any other movie, the IRS agent is evil.
Yeah.
Is like, that's the fucking devil.
And it's fun to defeat them. I mean, that's
what this movie's doing for a lot of it. And then when you sit down with her on that bench, you're like, oh, this is a person.
Yeah.
She's just trying to do her job, and this is a real person that goes through the same struggles we are, which is the theme of the fucking movie, is that we're all in this together. Yeah. And it's what Waymond says, which is like, I know you're fighting because you're scared. And it's it's what not Alpha Waymond, but it's like the suit Waymond says, which is like, I know you think I'm naive because I think this way, but it's how I fight, which is like, it's a naive way to think like, oh, you're just fighting because you're scared, but it's so fucking true. Yeah. We're all arguing because we're just fucking terrified.
And everyone's suffering or in pain in some sort of way. you know?
It hit me from the moment I watched it in theaters. I remember in the car talking about it, how like I like my eyes welled up immediately.
Yeah.
But now it's like every time I watch it, I break down.
Yeah, man. I know. Me too. Me too, honestly. The movie gets me very hard.
It was a great way you described it early on in this podcast, how this movie kind of helps you snap back a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of whips you into shape mentally a little bit, you know. At least for me, it does. And I hope many listeners get that out of this movie.
It did that for me as well.
Yeah.
So, can we get to the write-ins?
Yeah, let's.
So we asked you guys how Everything Everywhere All at Once changed you, and our fans emailed us at moviesthatchangedus@gmail.com. If you'd like to email us for the next movie we do, we always announce them on our Instagram. You can follow us there, or our YouTube community posts if you haven't already subscribed to our channel.
Yeah,
So you can find us on YouTube and Instagram at Movies That Changed Us.
We also put them on Patreon too, if you ever want to follow us for free on Patreon as well.
Yeah.
Because we make them public posts on there as well.
So we always announce them so you have time to email us. And do you want to read off the first one?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, I'm going to move my computer over here.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So this one's from John. Everything Everywhere All at Once reached me in a way that few movies have since I was a relentless moviegoer in the 1970s. Yes, I'm old. It reminded me of the excitement of seeing a new movie directed by Robert Altman or Francis Ford Coppola or another of the exciting, unpredictable new directors of that time. For the first time in a long time, a new movie was funny, unpredictable, exciting, specific, visually packed, and incredibly moving, and all at the same time. The funny, even crude bits were inseparable from the moments that made me cry uncontrollably, which also made me gasp at the audacity of it all. I knew I was experiencing a true, unique voice on the screen, which makes it all the more astonishing that it came from a team of two. I came to it a few months late, and I was still a bit skittish about going back into the movie theater in 2022. But how I wish I had seen it in a theater and experienced all those amazing moments, like the fake-out ending. Remember when it cuts to the credits?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. As part of a big audience. If it ever gets a special one-night screening in selected theaters, I'll be there for sure.
I'm sure it's going to get re-releases.
I mean, I've already been to one. You know, they had Rooftop Cinema Club.
That's right, you
that.
did.
Yeah, I went to that, and it was fucking sick.
What stood out to me about that write-in was the way he said inseparable, like how the weird and crazy parts were inseparable from the emotional moments. That's what works about this movie, is that even a hot dog world, which is the thing that people reference a lot about this movie, does emotionally move you and is important to the movie, which Evelyn's, what she says to Joy later. She's like, even in a world that's filled with hot dogs and everything, I still choose to be with you.
Yeah, and the Rakakuni scene did that too, you know, which we didn't really talk. We haven't. This is our first time mentioning the Rakakuni subplot, but when he's crying over the Rakakuni being taken away, whatever, when he says like I'm nothing when I'm alone, kind of thing, then the voiceover saying that like we are not alone, essentially.
Rakakuni also, you're just like, oh, this is a fun Pixar joke, and then you realize it's sung and voiced by fucking Randy Newman. Yeah. They got Randy Newman.
I know, man. Dude, all the hibachi stuff is just amazing. Just all the little cutaways of them looking balancing the egg on the spatula. It's great.
It's kind of this like, especially when Evelyn like throws him on her shoulder and is like, let's go get your Rakakuni or whatever. It's that part to me feels like whatever your dumb ambitions are, whatever gives you happiness and love, let me be there for you and let me help you.
Yeah.
That's kind of the best you can do, you know? So lovely email. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
Okay. I'll read out the next one. This is from, the username is titled The Umpteenth Doctor, which is fun. The single most bizarre movie I have ever seen. It's a movie with every genre you can think of. The self-censorship in one of the fight scenes was comedy genius. Oh yeah, that's true. They literally
pixelate the butthole.
Kiwi Quan was absolutely fantastic, going from meek to badass, then smooth to suave. Quickly, which that's something we didn't mention, how funny it is when he turns into regular Waymond.
Oh yeah,
he's like, oh my hand.
yeah, immediately when he has all the paper cuts.
And he's like, oh, this is so heavy. Like when he just switches, it's great. In any other movie, using a dog as nunchucks would have people up in arms, but this movie gets away with it.
I forgot about that too. This movie has so much, man. I forgot her name, the SNL
Jenny
lady.
Slade.
Jenny Slade.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
The most heartwarming scenes in this movie are two rocks sitting on cliff. We didn't even mention that.
Oh my God, I know. We missed so much. This movie has too much.
How do people think of scenes like that and go, yeah, that'll work? Amazing.
Okay, can we quickly... Thank you so much, Umpteen Doctor.
You want to talk about the rocks, I'm assuming?
I agree with everything you said. I know.
Yeah, you actually kind of reminded us how much we missed in this podcast.
Yeah, thank you. You actually touched on a lot. So, but no, just to go over the rock scene, that is an incredibly important scene.
Sure.
Because I just love, it's really obvious, but I just love that it takes place in this quiet world that couldn't sustain life. They started off saying like, most worlds are like this, it can't even sustain life. Because it also immediately sets the tone that like this, like Earth is kind of fucking crazy. You know what I mean? That like we can hold life on some of its surface, that we can breathe the air that we breathe, we can drink water, all the things that we get to experience.
Yeah.
Because most planets do not hold life.
Yeah, it was an interesting touch of like, most universes are kind of just like this. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't even think about that, right? Because we're so in our own heads and caught up in our bullshit and our consciousness. And then we wake up and realize like, oh yeah, like I'm alive. I'm a person.
Yeah. The unique choice of just showing text popping up. That's a moment that like being in the theater was really special. Of just like, It was like, wow, we're just all here reading this. This is pretty wild.
Were there people reading it out loud?
Well,
I can't remember.
I remember like right behind us, there were these two guys that were so fucking annoying. Every time a text would pop up, they would read it and laugh. And we were all chuckling. We were all laughing, right? Because there was like stuff that was funny in it. But they were just reading like, oh my God. And like they're reading everything that would pop up. And we're like, just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, you and I have a bad string of luck when it comes to moviegoers and silent scenes. Like there are moments when, the main thing that you and I can talk about is when we went and saw Wakanda Forever.
During the funeral part.
The funeral part, when it cuts to the title logos, if anyone's seen Wakanda Forever, you know what we're talking about. It's dead silent, and it's supposed to be like a mourning moment of silence for Chadwick Boseman. And there were these two fuckers, like 2 rows ahead of us, that were like, yeah, this and that. They were just whispering to each other during that silent scene.
And they would laugh at moments that were not meant to be laughed at. And it was anyways, it's funny because like separately, I think you and I have had pretty good luck. But whenever we're watching a movie together, somehow we always get introduced to these assholes.
Maybe it's like a weird karma thing because you and I made a career out of talking over movies. And then like, here we are like in theaters. Like, hey, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's the universe telling us something. No, okay. What I wanted to bring up about the rock scene is that moment where this is the part of the movie where Jobu and Evelyn have kind of like come together in terms of like, oh, nothing matters, right? And they both share a laugh, like in text, you see ha ha ha, and then the rock that is Jobu says fuck. And Evelyn's like, what happened? And she was like, I wish you would see something different here. That is the key to that moment to me. And that is the key to the movie, which is basically like, as someone who's gone through phases of depression and phases of anxiety, and you feel like, man, everything's fucking bad. Yeah. And you're pretty set on that feeling. Like things are fucked. You're not looking for people to agree with you. You are secretly looking for people to disagree with you. You are, as much as you want to be argumentative towards people who are like seeing the bright side of things, you also need that. And so when she says, fuck, I would wishing you would see something different, an evil character that's been basically pretty set on the fact that nothing matters and now wishes that Evelyn would see something different is remarkable.
Yeah. I know. And it's like I've been saying this whole time, it's so personal, for everyone watching. Because I think people who, like you said, people who are suffering, with their worldview or whatever it is, just want help or want to feel that love or that like enthusiasm for life again.
But similar to Jobu, they don't know how to ask for it.
Yeah. Or know how to get it or what places to look or how to do it. That's the thing that's the world can suffocate you.
I remember when you were going through a rough time last week, as you mentioned, and I remember we had sort of like an argument about the fact that like, hey man, I wish you would reach out to me in those moments. And I remember you said, you're like, to be honest, man, I wanted to throw my phone against the wall. I was like, and because you were telling me, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, we can cut this out.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. I remember you were telling me that there was like this level of shame, which is like, I'm disappointing people. I'm now Altaf's texting me and I can't reach out to him. But now that I'm not reaching out to him, I feel like I'm disappointing him. And there's a lot of guilt. And that I feel like that's resonant in that scene, The Rocks. It's just like Jobu's someone that's just like feels all that stuff, and then also feels this level of just like, but please fucking help me.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know how to ask for it though, because when you're feeling that way, you don't know how to get out.
Yeah.
And you can't fully understand that there's people out there that love you. Like, you know that I love you. You know that there's people that love you, that will help you with whatever you need. But in that moment, it kind of helped me understand, because I haven't gone through it as bad as you did. And in that moment, it helped me understand you a little bit better, and that feeling a little bit better of just like, oh no, but the thing is that's tough is like when you're feeling depressed like that, you can't see that. It's so hard to see that.
It's hard to see it, and it's like you don't want to be told you're doing it wrong, if that makes any sense. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting.
And I think Joy probably felt that too, because like all, Evelyn was doing is like, you don't call me, you're getting fat, you're doing that, like you're living life the wrong way. That's why you're sad. You know what I'm saying? And I think, at least for me, and what I've seen from other people who've gone through it too, when they want help from people, they don't want to be judged and told that they're doing it wrong in the process. It's okay to motivate someone like, hey, maybe you do this, but it's important to do it from a place of not like, you're a burden to me, you're annoying me, with your depression. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's important to like look at it from a perspective of like, this isn't your fault and I'm going to help you out of this.
Okay. That's interesting. I mean, it makes complete sense. And sometimes I think I struggle with that, of just like, if you're going through something, right? I'm someone that like, I'm kind of the opposite. If I'm going through a really rough time, I immediately try to be like, can you talk right now? Let's hash this through. I think you're someone, if you don't mind me saying it, again, we can cut this out if you don't want
No,
it.
go for it. Yeah, you can.
If you don't mind me saying it, I feel like you're someone that goes kind of MIA a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I've had experiences with you where like, if you're going through a rough time, you'll just be like, I don't want to talk, pull back. And I think we've had conversations later on, which is like, because you and I are also business partners, you've worried that sometimes I can be a little too much business forward and I can't befriend Altaf. And I just like, I think that sometimes hurts a little bit of just being like, oh fuck, man. I wish I could switch that part of my brain off a little bit easier too, and I could just be your friend. And I was telling you, I was like, well, sometimes it's like I'm trying to help in a way that I think is helpful, but it's not, which is like, I'm trying to take that burden of work away from you. But in order to do that, I do need to communicate with work about you in this moment.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I relate to both Evelyn and Joy in this movie. Evelyn being like, you're getting fat is her way of just being like, I care about you so much.
Yeah.
But it's like she's going about it the wrong way. And that's how I feel sometimes when like you, my friend, are going through something. I want to like help you, but I might be going at it at a wrong direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which I mean, I don't blame you for that sort of thing at all.
I know
it's
you
what
don't,
it is.
but I'm just
we talk
trying to,
about it.
Yeah.
Just to be clear for listeners too, that you and I do like talk about these things, and that's what's kind of cool. So we can kind of
we've talked about it before. That's why we're able to talk about it on mic.
Exactly. Yeah.
This isn't the first time you and I have discussed this.
Yeah, 100%. So. And everyone goes through things differently, but I think that, from what I've experienced and seen, is the biggest thing is just listening and acknowledging what they might want or need. You know?
The best thing you've done for me is that, though. I feel like when I've gone through situations where I feel like I can't get out of this hole, you've been a great listener, and you've kind of reinforced that. You've validated my feelings. Like, you never made me feel the way you fear of making me make you feel.
Listeners can't see, Alto just made a face like he just
that didn't really
like
make
that
sense.
sentence.
But you know how you told me you were just like, I don't want to like you don't want to be told that you're doing something wrong.
Yeah,
you never made me feel that way. You like, if I'm going through something, you're like, listen, man, totally get what you're feeling. Like you've always listened, and you've kind of just been present. And a lot of the times, you being present is all the work that's necessary. And I think I've learned a lot from that. I think that this movie kind of contextualizes that too. Is just like, listen, we just got to be here for each other. I know nothing matters, but I still want to be with you.
Well, exactly. To wrap it all up back to the movie is that like Evelyn just ends up accepting Joy. That's really all it is. Joy doesn't make these profound life changes to fix her mindset or worldview or whatever, but she just knows that she has a mom that supports her.
I love that there's no apology, which is like a kind of a hacky scene that would happen in another movie, which is like, I'm sorry for treating you this way. Evelyn shows that she's sorry through her actions. and how she introduces the girlfriend to James Hong, and immediately Joy is like upset because like this is not going to make it okay.
Yeah.
And
like, it doesn't make me feel better. This is about you. What you're doing, you're just showing me your own self-actualization.
And I think I just want to read off the thing that Evelyn says, because I've been referencing it, but I just want to read it clearly. Evelyn says, maybe it's like you said. Maybe there's something out there, some new discovery that will make us feel like even smaller pieces of shit. Something that explains why you still went looking for me through all this noise, and why no matter what, I still want to be here with you. I will always, always want to be here with you.
Yeah.
That is the thing, is just like you realize, like, Jobu Tupaki like consistently went after Evelyn.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't have to. She could just destroy the universe.
She could have just wiped out the universe, but she just wanted... Exactly.
But it's like this cry for help.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of wild. It's like, what if Agent Smith just wanted like a hug? You know what I mean?
Mr. Anderson.
You never saw me for who I was.
Open your arms. Let us embrace.
We gotta do The Matrix eventually.
We'll get to it. Of course we will. Yeah.
We can wrap it up here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting us again and again. We really appreciate it. And, just to end off this very therapeutic podcast, we hope you're doing well. We hope you feel loved. And we hope this movie snaps you out of that hole that you're in, like the way it did for us.
Yeah, it's streaming on Max if anyone wants a little heart boost.
And if it didn't, just know that we love you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Last but not least, stay nice, dudes.